Where's Deadpool Batman, Rob? Well, Marvel made it physical only, so we'll make a video about it, but I gotta wait until my local comic book store opens at 12 o'clock to go and get it. So we're covering this for right now. So this is the war between the Phoenix Force and the cosmic entities, and it's actually the end of Stephanie Phillips' run on the Phoenix. Now, the way things ended previously, and kind of what we had learned, was that Jean Grey's sister, SARA GREY, had basically returned. The last time we'd seen her, she was basically absorbed by Cameron Hodge back in the 90s, and she was essentially dead. But what ended up happening is that when she reappeared, we learned that Jean Grey had basically just made her out of nothing by essentially using the very fabric of reality itself, but it created an instability. And when Jean was taken to the future by Cable to show her the consequences of having recreated SARA GREY, it was basically the fact that the universe was coming to an end. And so all the cosmic entities banded together. What this does is it jumps back before the cosmic entities directly appeared to Jean in order to tell her that she had to destroy SARA to save all of creation. And this is initially a conversation between Eternity and Oblivion, where Eternity kind of talks to Oblivion about the conversation they had when they all agreed to go and confront the Phoenix. And then he says Oblivion left with fewer pleasantries than normal. And he asked the question, who knew that you had such love for the Phoenix? But the response of Oblivion, without the creation of the Phoenix, what is there for Oblivion to unmake? Without such cycles of life and death, how would we define the role of Eternity? And where Eternity responds in saying, if the Phoenix no longer serves balance, judgment must be passed. And that's where Oblivion responds in saying judgment has already been passed by all who agreed with the living tribunal. And where Eternity responds in saying final action against the Phoenix will not be taken until all other options have been extinguished. That is what we agreed. Oblivion kind of fires back and he says, you don't plan peace with a sword drawn. Now, the reason why all of this is so important is because, as a lot of you guys probably know about the cosmic entities in Marvel Comics, they all serve fundamental purposes, fundamental roles. That was initially kind of laid out to a degree by the Living Tribunal in the old Doctor Strange comics in his first appearance, when he talked about serving basically God. It was one of the very few instances when God was basically referenced as like the Judeo-Christian God, for lack of a better word. But over the years, that's evolved and has changed. The conversation between Mistress Death and Galactus, where Mistress Death basically tells him about how he reconciles his role in destroying basically different planets in order to feed himself, while simultaneously that very act leads to new life. But there is a kind of balance that has to be maintained. If for any reason a cosmic entity were to abdicate their role and they were to walk away from their responsibilities and go off on their path, they could very well lead to a kind of imbalance within the universe. Now, contextually, Stephanie Phillips is largely just using this in order to justify the story, and you guys will see what I mean here in a little while, but she's not too far off how cosmic entities are supposed to be acting. A really good example of this is when Thanos attained the Infinity Gauntlet and then took over the role of Eternity, the highest ranking cosmic entity within the universe, and that where Eternity sought the basically judgment of the Living Tribunal in order to deactivate the Infinity Gauntlet and then return Thanos back to his normal state, that the Living Tribunal rejected that and simply saying that the weak are replaced by the strong. And so if Eternity was unable to maintain his position in the face of Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet, and because the Infinity Stones are part and parcel to the universe itself, then Eternity being replaced is just the natural progression of things. So again, a kind of hierarchy and a structure for the cosmic entities has to be there. And so that's where Eternity fires back to Oblivion and says, your sympathy only proves the problem. The Phoenix has become too human. And then Infinity appears and simply says, unpredictable, selfish, emotional, all things have their ends. And if the Phoenix resists our will, then this is where the Phoenix ends. And so then it jumps to the current moment. Now, this is a huge inconsistency regarding the nature of the Phoenix within Marvel Comics, and I'll talk about that here in a little bit, but it kind of picks up with Jean, basically addressing everything that's going on, where she says, we're not afraid of gods. We are the Phoenix. But the reality here is that it's a lie. She's horrified in the face of the cosmic entities. That's the first major inconsistency. From Jean Grey's perspective, the cosmic entities are these astronomically powerful beings. They literally represent abstract concepts within a universe. And so cosmic entities can never truly be destroyed, so long as the concepts of order and chaos exist within a universe, meaning so long as just life itself exists, then the cosmic entities will remain. And until such a time where a physical universe is completely eradicated, eternity will exist. That was one of the cool things about Hickman's Avengers and New Avengers, for example. When the Beyonders destroyed eternity and infinity, they were essentially destroying the universe. They were destroying the physical manifestation of it, but they were destroying a universe nonetheless. And so that's why Jean Grey says, because even as the Phoenix, even with the embodiments of past Phoenix hosts with me for strength, I know that we cannot win. And losing means so much more than death. Losing means the family I have left dies with me. It means that the consciousness of all other Phoenix hosts will be destroyed. But winning, somehow saving my sister, it means the white-hot room and the souls that reside inside of it will be destroyed, followed by the rest of the universe collapsing inward on itself. Not only that, she says, Rachel and Hope, daughters to me in different ways, and some of the strongest people I know. This is not the reunion with them that I had hoped for, but they appeared by my side with no questions asked. Fong Ji-woo, one of the first Phoenix hosts, Rookshire, the first of the Shi'ar to host the Phoenix, even Quentin Quire with all his quirks, they're all here. This cannot mean nothing. Now, this is where we're talking about huge inconsistencies, specifically the statement where she says, losing means the family that I have left dies with me. It means that the consciousness of all the other Phoenix hosts will be destroyed. The reason why that matters is because this is essentially illustrating that within the white hot room, Jean Grey is part and parcel to the Phoenix Force, right? She and the Phoenix are one in the same. And in fact, one of the common themes over the course of the story is that Jean is the Phoenix and the Phoenix is Jean. Now, again, this is just kind of Stephanie Phillips' interpretation. And depending on your view of the Phoenix Force, you really do kind of see it as an inconsistency, because historically speaking, the Phoenix cares nothing about the cosmic entities, not in the sense that she disregards them, but in the sense that they're so far below her. The Phoenix Force is powerful on a multiversal level, capable of creating and destroying realities on a whim. So the only real cosmic entities here that would pose any real threat to the Phoenix Force would be Oblivion and the Living Tribunal. And that's it. And it's really only because of the fact that up until Jonathan Hickman's Gods, Oblivion kind of represented the absence of existence. So he would outlast everything, presumably even the one above all. But in Jonathan Hickman's Gods, the Living Tribunal and Oblivion were basically put on the same level. They're kind of two sides of the same coin, not that dissimilar from like Master Order and Lord Chaos, right? Creation, life, death, that sort of thing. And even within the context of this, Oblivion talks about the idea of the Phoenix Force being his opposite, right? Oblivion represents a lack of existence. The Phoenix Force represents life. And so it's so strange that suddenly within the context of this story, they're all suddenly equal in power, and the cosmic entities have the ability to pass judgment over the Phoenix. The alternative to this is that they're simply just passing judgment as more of a ceremonial thing. And that really comes down to Oblivion. Because what ends up happening is that with Jean coming to this realization, she ultimately says, I can hold it, the white hot room, I can hold it together if you help me. And so that's where Eternity asks the question, is it time, Oblivion? And Oblivion simply says, this is it, right? This is your judgment. And the Living Tribunal responds in saying, this is our judgment. And they say, the Phoenix will be no more. So says the Living Tribunal. And so Infinity, Master Order, Lord Chaos, Continuum, the Preordained, Eternity, they all agree to pass judgment. And so in turn, the statement's made, then let it be done. And Eternity goes to launch an attack against the Phoenix. And she simply says, give me your strength. And Rachel Summers chimes in and saying, with that much power, it's too much even for you. And Jean simply says, just please, it's the only option. So again, this is kind of Stephanie Phillips essentially showing that Jean Grey, even with the power of the Phoenix, cannot rival the power of the cosmic entities. Which is wrong, which is, again, a kind of inconsistency given the history of the Phoenix Force within Marvel Comics and the level of power that it's historically possessed. And so Jean even says, it's not enough. I've reignited stars, stabilized black holes, ended a god killer, and even stood against the dark gods. But it was not enough. This is the end, and I will spend it holding the very fabric of reality together for as long as I can. The Phoenix has not always always acted with love. The people who have been hurt, the countless lives lost, have made me ask over and over again if I am truly worthy of this power. And usually, I say no. I've done my job because I believed it was better to have it be me than anyone else, because I know how it feels to live with the voices of the dead, and I would not wish that even on my enemies. I've made plenty of mistakes as the Phoenix, but protecting the people I love, protecting my sister Sarah, will never be one of them. And so that's where Oblivion simply walks up to Jean, who just sort of collapses under the power of eternity and the other cosmic entities, and he just says, I've known the Phoenix for eons, through various hosts, varying moods, but I would speak to Jean Grey now, and I believe that Jean Grey has changed the Phoenix for the better. Jean Grey is the Phoenix, but even Oblivion must pass his judgment. And so that's kind of the craziness behind it all, is because Oblivion is the one who goes in for the killing blow, only for SARA GREY to step in and to simply stop the proceedings. And she just addresses all the cosmic entities here and says, my name is SARA GREY, a mortal woman from Earth, and I have not passed my judgment. God's acting for the benefit of the universe, speaking on behalf of the cosmos and working to uphold balance. You have all acted without compassion, and without compassion, the universe will fall. In judging the Phoenix, you damn yourselves and all you claim to protect. It's true that the Phoenix Force is one with the human woman with Jean Grey, but you said it yourself, Oblivion, they are one for the better. Humanity has not simply corrupted the Phoenix, it has tamed it, taught it, wielded it with intent and purpose. And though she may not be a god, she is the best of us, a light in the dark, and even a god needs that. And so eternity is kind of moved by this statement to a degree, not enough to completely sway him. And in fact, he even says, even the gods need a judge. But that's the role of the living tribunal. The role of the living tribunal is to ensure that all beings across the multiverse are acting in accordance with their various roles. 99.999 repeating on into infinity % of the time, the living tribunal doesn't have to do anything with like normal human beings, right? You have guys like Franklin Richards or the Molecule Man or something like that who could potentially, and historically have, specifically with Molecule Man, potentially represented some kind of imbalance within the multiverse itself, or even been a credible threat to the multiverse depending on the context. But most people just get up in the morning and they go to work and then they come home and then they go to bed and they do it all again the next day. Right? They don't have enough power to change their own life, let alone the universe or even the multiverse. But when it comes to cosmic entities, that's the job of the tribunal. And that's why I say the story and the role of the cosmic entities is just kind of being modified and changed by Stephanie Phillips to fit the story, as opposed to fitting the story into the role of the cosmic entities, because they're not supposed to be human. They're not supposed to be able to empathize with humanity. They simply represent concepts and they serve a role, and that's it. And so that's why eternity says, even so, your existence threatens the very structure of the universe. A piece of its spine was removed to create you, and without it, Sarah, of course, finishes the statement and says, without it, all life is unstable. And so she takes the only option here. Then end me, right? If I am the one that is your problem, then do what you have to do. Because ultimately, Jean Grey wasn't capable of doing it. Now, of course, Jean doesn't want to see her sister die again, right? She doesn't want to see SARA GREY disappear. And even Jean tells Oblivion, if the universe needs me, it needs Sarah. We are linked. We are connected, one and the same. And where Sarah kind of says, look, I mean, I can appreciate the sentiment, but like, I am not worth the entire universe. The response of Jean, yes, you are, right? She's willing to doom all of creation to keep her sister alive, which doesn't really make a whole lot of sense because her sister would die if all creation came to an end. But Jean simply says, Cable, the gods, now you've all tried to convince me that defending you is selfish. And though I love you with all my heart, Sarah, I would defend any living soul from having to make a sacrifice to appease the balance of the universe. We should not measure one life against others. We should not glorify sacrifices for the greater good. We should seek to find a way to preserve every life. If there is an imbalance in the universe, then we will right it. And if you are incapable of such an act, then I hardly find you worthy of the title of God. And so at that point, Oblivion's kind of like, she has a point, right? We are cosmic entities and we do represent the fundamental forces of creation. If we cannot fix this imbalance, then, what do we do? But that's the irony of it. They were going to, by killing Jean. And so again, it's a kind of a wonky story, right? Because with the nature of cosmic entities, preserving life and all that kind of stuff, that doesn't really matter, right? Self-preservation, so long as eternity exists, the universe will exist. One goes hand in hand. It's like saying, in order to make sure that your heart beats, you need to make sure that you think about it. No, it's a passive action. It happens whether you intend for it to or not, until such a time that your heart stops, either due to old age or just bad eating habits. But the fact is, again, it's basically changing the Marvel Universe to fit the story, as opposed to writing the story in a way that fits the Marvel Universe. And so at the end of the day, Eternity says, we hear your concerns, Phoenix, but you will not overstep your bounds again. As for SARA GREY, I think I have something in mind for her talents. And while we're not really told what her talents are, and historically speaking, SARA GREY's never really had powers. She was just kind of an advocate for the mutant population. That history of advocacy kind of expands out here in the sense that she says that the cosmic entities now call her beacon, a guiding light for the gods, someone to ensure that they don't stray too far from compassion. What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. She's just there in the Marvel Universe now. And so at the end of the day, her and Jean just kind of have this pretty touching moment where Jean says, are they set on that name, right? And that's where Sarah's like, not the most creative name, but nobody ever said Eternity was that creative in the first place. And so Jean just asks her, are you happy? And the response of Sarah, I am, right? The work I do, it feels important. And she says, occasionally, I do wonder what I am, right? Memories, pieces of the universe. I'm SARA GREY and I'm not at the same time. But Jean just kind of reassures her, right? She says, you are SARA GREY, which is not a misstatement, right? I guess maybe on a atomic level, we're all just sort of pieces of the universe walking around in sentient form. But she says, you are my sister. And thanks to you, Scott, Hope, Rachel, even Cable, thanks to all of you, I am finally happy. And so with that being said, guys, we're going to bring this to an end. It is an official end to Stephanie Phillips' run on the Phoenix. My personal opinion, it started off great, and then she just didn't know how to end it. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, drop a like. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.